Are you able to see now?
Yeah, yes.
All right. So thank you. At the outset, I'd like to thank Dr. Chitra and Team ARC for giving me this opportunity to be amongst the stalwarts of cornea in the country. And so after listening to all the types of transplants, PK, DSEC, DMAC, let's talk about the dark side of the transplant. So I'll be talking about graft resection and failure for the next 15 minutes. Okay, so corneal transplantation, as we know, is considered the most common and successful tissue transplantation procedure in medicine. But yet, there is no standardized protocol for post-operative prophylaxis and the treatment of immunological resection till date. The majority of corneal grafts occur as first transplants in low-risk recipients, such as those with keratoconus and dystrophies, where the survival rates are very good, more than 90-95%. The problem is with the high-risk grafts. High-risk grafts are like eyes with 2 or more quadrants of vascularization, larger grafts, herpes simplex keratitis, uveitis, previously failed grafts, infected hot eyes, which unfortunately is the most common indication of graft in our country, and when the recipient is young. Previous surgeries, particularly glaucoma, anterior iris synechiae, and vitreous sedation, all raise the resection risk of the transplanted graft. Just to see things at perspective, Sir Peter Medawar in 1948, he was the first one to experimentally analyze the immune response in the eye. What he did was he injected skin graft into the anterior chamber of rabbits, and what he observed was the skin graft which was close to iris was rejected, and those which was adjacent to endothelium survived. And thus he concluded that the vessels are crucial for a sufficient immune response against foreign tissue. And for the same work, he was awarded Nobel Prize in 1960. So cornea is blessed. Cornea is avascular. And there's an absence of lymphatic vessel in the central cornea. There are presence of secretory immunomodulatory factors, which have inhibitory effect on variety of inflammatory cells. Corneal endothelial cells promote apoptosis of CD95 T cells. Additionally, corneal endothelial cells express very low levels of MHC molecules. So because of all these reasons, it's considered as a relatively immune privilege. Also, the biggest advantage with us of the cornea is that we can apply immunosuppressives directly on the cornea, like topical steroids can be used, right? But still, in spite of all this, allogenic resection is the commonest cause of graft failure. Let's look at the incidence of resection. Any reported incidence of resection in any series will depend upon the indication for graft, type of graft, and other factors like high-risk graft and young recipients. Low-risk PK, the incidence of resection is around 5 to 17%, whereas in high-risk PK, it can go up to 68%. DALK, DSEC, DMAC has a very low incidence of resection. 30% of the graft is still experience at least one episode of resection, and 5 to 7% lead to eventual graft failure. Endothelial resection, which is the most common resection which we see, it presents as limbal injection. There were cells in the aqueous. We'll see KPs, choroidous line. Sometimes you will see a choroidous line is seen only in a longer established resection advancing across the graft and associated with corneal edema. Corneal edema happens because of the localized endothelial cell injury. We can also see sometimes epithelial and stromal resection. Stromal rejections presents as nummular subepithelial infiltrates, and whereas epithelial, you'll see epithelial resection lines. These are very uncommon, but still we see sometimes. So the timing of resection, usually we see endothelial resections at the end of a year, or maybe probably in the early next year, after 12 months, around 12 months. But sometimes resection has been reported even after 9 years. And contrary to this, you see resection in solid organ transplant in the first 3 months, actually. So the management of graft resection. So basically, if the resection begins, it must be reversed before irreparable damage is done to the endothelium. Rates of reversibility of severe endothelial resection are between 51% and 64%. Topical corticosteroids still remains the mainstay of therapy for graft resection, but there is still very little information on the optimal steroid doses and the route of administration. Before we go to the treatment of resection, let's see what is the common practices for post-operative care. So either we use topical prednisolone or dexamethasone. Topical prednisolone should be used because it achieves high level of aqueous concentration within 120 minutes, and it maintains a significant level over 24 hours. Whereas dexamethasone attains peak levels faster than prednisolone, but the levels which we see in aqueous is much, much less than prednisolone. And after a year, so we can switch to softer steroids like fluoromethanol or loteprednol. Steroids for life. I use steroids for life, whether it can be Predford, dexamethasone, or soft steroids. Other immunosuppressants has been tried like cyclosporin and tacrolimus, but still their role is still debatable. Although tacrolimus has shown some promising results, mycophenolate mofetil, azathioprine, cyclophosphamide, rapamycin, and other biologics, still their role is not proven. So the prompt and appropriate management of rejection is very important to reverse it and keep the graft still clear. So decision on the choice of route and doses of steroids is very important. So what I follow is, if the patient is off topical steroids, like in a DALC after a year or DSEC after a year, and it's or using very infrequently, what we do is just increasing the steroid frequency of steroid will reverse the rejection. But if the patient is using frequent steroid and still develops rejection episodes and it's a high risk recipient, it's better to start systemic steroids. Some patients are unable to tolerate systemic steroids, so you can also give subconj DECA, helps in those cases. So the treatment of graft rejection, like using systemic steroids, is still very debatable. IVMP has been tried, but there was no difference in terms of reversal of graft rejection episode, later recurrence of graft rejection or graft failure. Subconj triamcinolone has shown some superiority over intravenous methylprednisolone, but we do use it subconjunctival sometimes, but not always. Likewise, there was no beneficial effect of cyclosporin or tacrolimus in the reversal of graft rejection. Most importantly, we have to find out if we have treated rejection, they should not. We should prevent further episodes. So we should be identifying the what are the inciting factors for rejection, like loose sutures, vascularization, or non-compliant to drops. Or if it's a high-risk graft, you have to keep on using steroids. Topical steroids for life, gradually tapering it to once or twice daily, should be practiced. In spite of all this, we have given appropriate steroid therapy in rejection, but still the graft clarity is worsening. So that is the time when you have to rethink about your diagnosis. Like this case? Looks like typical graft rejection, but it wasn't. So this case, this patient was operated for PK for keratoconus in May 2018 and was switched to loteprednol in once a day in July 2019. And then it presented like a graft rejection, and then there was no improvement with topical steroid over a month. Then we did AC-TAP, and then we started AC-TAP came positive, and when we started the patient on valganciclovir, and slowly over the period of 2 weeks, we started seeing a drastic improvement. So why we have to think why it is CMV enterolitis and why not endothelial rejections? First of all, timing of presentation. Usually CMV enterolitis presents early in the course of graft, and you have to see the pattern of KPs. These are usually coin-shaped or pigmented KPs associated with high IOP and worsens with the steroids. So like in this case, this is a picture of typical coin-shaped KP. And if the diagnosis is missed over the period of time, what happens is corneal decompensation. And then this patient had corneal decompensation and underwent DMEC after 12 weeks of Valgan, and doing very well now. These are the similar pictures where we have seen endothelitis after DSEC, DMEC, and PK. So coming to graft failure, if graft failure is defined as the failure of corneal transplant to restore adequately the visual function of the patient in the absence of concomitant pathology. Corneal graft failure is one of the most common indication for corneal transplantation now. Most common causes of graft failure are endothelial decompensation. It could be secondary to rejection, and it could be just a primary graft failure. So primary graft failure is defined as presence of a diffusely edematous corneal graft on the first post-operative day that fails to clear at any time post-operatively. Usually is the result of inadequate donor endothelial cell function or during surgical trauma while doing the surgery. Timing of regrafting is very important in these cases. I think it should be done as soon as possible because the body is still not sensitized to this graft. And we know that graft survival decreases with every successive graft. So we have to, if it is not getting clear in 2-3 weeks, then we just have to change the graft. This is the 5-year survival curve for successive graft. Here, the graft survival rate fell down from 72.5% for first graft to 18.6%. That's why we have to do it as soon as possible. Secondary graft failure, it is defined as the presence of diffuse and irreversible corneal edema in a previously functional transplant as a consequence of endothelial failure from immunological or non-immunological causes. Timing of regrafting, like we can wait for 2-3 months, and since the body is already sensitized, so there is no urgency. This is another type of graft failure, which is called morphological graft failure. It refers to clear grafts without transparency loss, but conferring poor visual function as a result of severe irregular astigmatism. I think Dr. Praveen is going to talk about management of these cases. So now the most difficult thing is to choose between which type of regraft you want to do. Nowadays, since all the corneal surgeons are preferring lamellar transplant over full thickness transplant, so the choice is becoming more difficult. The survival of replacement grafts had greater association with the number of prior grafts than primary corneal diagnosis or type of regraft procedure. Lamellar transplants have quantitatively less alloantigen than full thickness donor corneas and would for this region be expected to have higher rates of survival. Here we see that survival of DMEK, the success of DMEK is 97.4% at the end of 5 years compared to PK, which is just 54.6%. This is another study where they compared EK versus repeat PK after failed PK. What they found is a meta-analysis. What they found that the survival in the first year, 3 years, and 5 years between EK and repeat PK was almost same, but the number of rejection episodes were much higher in repeat PK compared to EK. So EK should be done for a failed PK now, if possible. So how to decide what type of graft you want to? The first question to consider is whether an EK might be performed. Next question, whether the existing graft at its best ever provided patient with useful vision. If, for example, the graft profile was excellent, affording the patient a high level of aided or unaided vision before failure, then every effort should be made to maintain this with an EK. At the other extreme, if the profile of the graft was highly irregular even before failure, then it may be more advantageous to attempt a redo PK and improve on the existing level of astigmatism. So DSEK or DMEK under failed PK, the results were almost similar, except that DMEK actually is more challenging to do under PK in the initial period, and a DSEK is easier to do, but the results were slightly better for DMEK compared to DSEK. There's a 5-year survival curve for successive regrafts. For any combination or permutation, the results were same, like for EK, EK, PK, PK, or PK, EK, or EK, PK. So if we are planning a DSEK under previously failed PK, we just have to keep few things in mind. Always do ASOCT, see the graft house junction. If it is too irregular, trim it, make it regular, and try to plan a smaller graft which comes under the rim of the already done PK. And if you are planning a larger graft, then at least 2 mm larger in size of DSEK is preferable. In conclusion, I would say topical corticosteroids remains the mainstay therapy in preventing immunological graft reactions for all types of corneal transplant. Consider differentials like CMV if the graft rejection fails to reverse in spite of prompt steroid therapy. Graft failure has become one of the most common indications for corneal transplantation nowadays. Lamellar cornea surgeries are being adopted quickly by all corneal surgeons due to its superior results and better survival. Regrafting with lamellar technique are a better option compared to PK. Thank you.
Thank you. You covered everything. I think we barely had need to have asked questions, Ashish. That was a great talk. Dr. Rajesh Fogla, I'm going to ask you a question. Is there actually any role of these topical cyclosporin tacrolimus as for rejection?
They may not play an important role in rejection. Steroids still remain the mainstay, but later on, to maintain better immunosuppression and avoid the complications of long-term use of steroids, they can supplement your topical steroids by adding topical tacrolimus or topical cyclosporin 2%. In India, we do have topical tacrolimus available. So they are kind of slightly safer, especially if your patient still has sutures, and if he has a broken suture or something, if he continues to use topical steroid, the risk of a secondary infection is much higher vis-a-vis using topical tacrolimus ointment.
We did a randomized control study from RP Center with topical cyclosporin, that to 2%, which is not available commercially. And we found that there was no difference whether you gave topical 2% cyclosporin or not. Rajesh has done yet another study. Dr. Rajesh, would you want to talk about?
Yeah. Actually, we did a study comparing, 2% cyclosporin with nothing along with steroid. And we just followed up the patient to look for prevention of graft rejection. and we found out that the outcome was similar. So cyclosporin, what we concluded was 2% cyclosporin doesn't prevent occurrence of graft rejection in these cases. So as far as graft rejection is concerned, cyclosporin may not help, but it helps in a surface improvement definitely. But we found in our study that it doesn't help in graft rejection.
One of the point Ashish made, sorry.
The only thing that we found out was in another study, we found out that the patients who were treated were given cyclosporin 2%, their reversal of rejection was better than
Faster.
those who were not getting cyclosporin.
Along with the steroids, you mean?
Yes, yes, along with steroid.
One of the points Ashish mentioned in his presentation, if I understood correctly, that IV MP did not perform as well as topical steroids. Am I right, Ashish?
No. It was It was not IVMP. It was just comparing IVMP with other oral steroids.
Okay.
And one more.
So there was no advantage of using IVMP over systemic steroids.
One more study that was done was that IVMP versus dexamethasone, because dexamethasone is cheaper and methylprednisolone is costly, so the patients are not able to afford it. So in the study that was done again from our center in randomized controlled study, it was found that the results are similar. So if the patients are not able to afford methylprednisolone, you can still give IV dexamethasone 100 milligrams. So that also works equally well.
Yeah, that we do sometimes.
We have to ask Dr. Sudhir.
Yeah, we did a study with one of the clinical trial with cyclosporin implant. Actually, they really did very well. These were a slow release cyclosporin, which is implanted subconjunctivally, and they are supposed to be there for a year. But most of the grafts did very well, and they were crystal clear. Unfortunately, I think that study was not, the clinical trial has to be ended because of some reason. But I think in long term, I think we may, this is excellent for high-risk grafts.
Yeah, I do remember. I think RP Center was also a part of the study, and this was initiated from Germany. And what happened was that in some of the cases, the implant that was done actually got exposed, and so it could not be sustained for a prolonged period of time, in the sense that some of them were extruded. So I think that was the reason why that study was discontinued, and the sponsors also backed out.
Shall we go on to our next speaker?
Yeah.
Yes.
We had done almost 20 implants, so they were really had a very good results in that.